This is video number 3 of a series on gravity. In the first one, we saw why we don't fly off the spinning ball, and we showed that spin accounts for a variation of 0.3% of an object's total weight. Number 2 was the notion that density and buoyancy explain everything without gravity, and we learned that buoyancy is caused by gravity. Those are misunderstandings commonly expressed by flat earthers. But I don't want to leave you with the impression that all flat earthers believe these things. Quite the contrary. If there's one thing to understand about the flat earth movement, it's that there is no single flat earth theory that they all agree to. Some flat earthers have suggested an alternative for gravity called universal acceleration.
Let's go! Hit it!
Traitor, universal soldier.
What the hell did they do to you?
Don't know.
No, not universal soldier, universal acceleration. This is an idea put forth by the Flat Earth Society. Now, I don't want to leave you with the impression that the Flat Earth Society as a group all agree on this idea. Just like the rest of the Flat Earth movement, the FES represents people from all sorts of different ideas about the Earth. So when I describe the FES in this video, please understand that I'm referring to this page of their wiki. I'll be doing my best to represent the views of the author of this page. And although the page is written as if it had the backing of the entire FES membership, we all understand it does not. I know. I've heard about how the Flat Earth Society is controlled opposition. I'll try to address that later. For now, let's try to evaluate this idea of universal acceleration. The basic idea is that the Earth is being pushed upwards at 9.8 meters per second squared. In the previous video, we showed how acceleration acts exactly like gravity. So if the Earth is accelerating upwards, that would make things fall, just like we observe. So that's a check. Looking good so far. In the first video, we talked about how the weight of a test mass is lower at the equator by about 0.3%. Does universal acceleration predict this observation? Well, not exactly, but maybe we can come back to this with an ad hoc hypothesis. In that same video, we also mentioned how the weight of a test mass gets lower at high altitudes. Does UA predict anything like that? It doesn't seem to, at least not at first, but let's get back to this one with some ad hoc too. Video number 2 was all about how we need a force field like gravity to cause buoyancy. We showed that accelerations create the same type of force field that gravity does, so buoyancy is covered. Now, I feel like I wouldn't be covering UA properly unless I repeat some of the most common criticisms of it. You often hear the argument that this acceleration would result in the Earth exceeding the speed of light. Accelerating 9.8 meters per second every second would get you to the speed of light in under a year. It's impossible to exceed the speed of light, isn't it? Okay, yeah, Einstein's theory of special relativity does say we're not able to exceed the speed of light, but that isn't going to apply here. Honestly, this whole video is mostly a big waste of time, but this part may be worth hearing because there's a lot of regular folks who could potentially learn a little bit about special relativity. It is we on the Earth who feel 9.8 meters per second squared. How fast is the Earth moving relative to us? 0. There's no danger of approaching the speed of light here because, as far as we can tell, we're not moving. When Einstein derived general relativity, he started with what we now call the equivalence principle. The equivalence principle just says you can't tell the difference between gravity and acceleration. So it turns out Einstein was totally cool with it. Boom! That's a win for the flat side. So yeah, here we have flat earthers using Einstein's principles to defend themselves in their efforts to reject Einstein's general theory of relativity. Ironic much? The criticism that usually comes next is the staggering amount of energy it would take to power all this. We're constantly accelerating the mass of the entire Earth at 9.8 meters per second squared. Where is all this energy coming from? The answer to this is surprisingly simple. We don't know. We don't need to know where the energy comes from in order to say that we see an energy source. Before we understood nuclear fusion, we were already pretty sure that the sun generated a lot of energy, right? Today, we have no idea what dark energy is, but that doesn't mean we reject the idea. Boom! Another win for the flats. So far, things aren't looking too bad for this universal acceleration thing. The density and buoyancy folks should definitely jump on board with this. So let's try out the tough ones. What about Kepler's laws? Newton's gravity was a breakthrough because it explained the motion of the planets. What does UA say about the planets? I'm afraid we're going to have to punt on that one. The Flat Earth Society doesn't know what the planets are, but they can be certain that universal acceleration doesn't explain the way they move. Okay, I've been putting this one off for quite a while now, but I think it's time I finally acknowledge the elephant in the room. Newton's version of gravity was unlike any notions of gravity before it because it suggested that all mass attracts all other mass. We see this on the Earth, but also with the Sun and all the other planets. This idea that all masses attract creates an obviously testable prediction. That's what science is all about. If Newton was right, we should be able to show that masses attract each other. Universal acceleration predicts no such thing, and certainly that density and buoyancy nonsense doesn't either. If we can show that masses attract each other, UA is out the window, and every flat earther knows it. Each and every one of them is painfully aware that experiments like the one by Henry Cavendish in 1798 validates the fact that mass attracts mass. So what do the folks at the FES have to say about that? It's tempting to delve into a line-by-line debunk of their wiki page on this, but let me just sum it up. The best measurement for big G so far differ by as much as 450 parts per million, and the Flat Earth Society has decided that invalidates the entire concept. It's surprising, but it's true. Big G is so small that it's actually quite difficult to measure accurately. But let's put that into perspective for a second. What does 450 parts per million mean? As a percent, that's 0.045%. So we've got the value of big G nailed down to within 99.955%. But that's just far too inaccurate for the folks over at the Flat Earth Society. I'm sorry, but no. That's a solid fail for universal acceleration. Okay, so maybe UA isn't looking so great now, but I promised we'd try to come up with some ad hoc to solve the variation issues. It would be dishonest of me to say the FES hasn't addressed this. They have. I'm going to have to show you because you probably wouldn't believe me if I told you. Here goes. Just so we're clear, I'm not strawmanning anything. The claim is that the Earth doesn't have gravity, but the moon and stars do. I hadn't even thought of tides, but yeah, that's a good point too. So gravity is obviously fake. The Cavendish experiment doesn't prove anything, but the moon? Sure, the moon has gravity. That's entirely different. I mean, of course the moon has gravity, and the stars. Not buying it? Yeah, me either. Clearly they aren't really either, because it's right here at the end of that section. Maybe those pesky gravity variations are all fake too. For some reason, the Flat Earth Society seems reluctant to go there, but it's the ultimate fallback used by all science deniers. It's the irrefutable argument. The grand and glorious, nuh-uh, it gets you out of anything. So I guess that pretty much wraps up universal acceleration, but I really should address the controversy surrounding the Flat Earth Society. Let's hear Eric Dubé's thoughts on this.
The Flat Earth Society is a controlled opposition group that mixes truth with lies and satire to discredit genuine flat Earth research, a job they've been doing for a long time now. Founded in 1970 by Leo Ferrari, a suspected Freemason and philosophy professor at St. Thomas's University, Leo spent his life making a mockery of the legitimate subject of our flat Earth.
Well, that was a pretty clear opinion. What does the FES have to say about this Leo Ferrari character? This is their wiki on it. I had to read this twice to be sure. It says right here that Ferrari's group was satirical, and you can see it was pretty witty. We're on the level. That cracks me up. But is Ferrari's Flat Earth Society of Canada the same Flat Earth Society as this one? Clearly they are not, but I had to take a pause to reflect on this. I had really expected the FES to attempt to distance themselves from this guy. This is their wiki, and they can put anything on here they want. But this article really seems to embrace the guy. Could they be trying to give us a little nod and a little wink here? Remember this page? Take a look at this section here. Terminal velocity. When the acceleration of the person is equal to the acceleration of the Earth, the person has reached terminal velocity. What? I mean, what is this? They can't be serious, right? Indeed, I've decided that they cannot. I feel like there's a whole video on this subject alone, but I've come to the conclusion that the Flat Earth Society is, as a whole, not serious. As I said before, their membership reflects all sorts of opinions, but the most vocal ones, the ones who write this wiki, they are not serious. But controlled opposition? That's a stretch. I mean, like the government is sponsoring this for some reason? I've never seen any evidence to suggest that. Or is it the secret Masonic conspiracy, maybe? I was actually at a Masonic temple last week. I took this picture myself because I figured somebody on here might get a chuckle out of it. I've got a clue for you. The Masons aren't any more secret than the Starbucks next door is. Ooh, maybe Starbucks is behind this. No? Nah, nobody seems to be backing this effort with any sort of government or corporate influence. Maybe the FES is satirical like Ferrari was. I guess maybe. But if so, I've got to tell you, they aren't very witty. Their best joke seems to be inexplicably moving posts around because of obscure rules. No, the Flat Earth Society doesn't seem to have any sense of humor as far as I can tell. I think some of them still see it as a vehicle to make a point of some kind, but it's mostly lost on me. So what is it then? I can't be sure, but I think the most likely answer is pretty simple. As far as I can tell, the Flat Earth Society and their whole universal acceleration idea is pure, unadulterated internet trolling. Simple as that.